y'all, Liz Winstead here. It's the end of this sewage lagoon of a year, and that means it's time my human life raft, aka my co-host Moji Alabodale, and I traumatize ourselves by looking back at what the fuck happened over the past year.
Yep, Liz and I dove into the vat of toxic 2025 news like Scrooge McDuck to bring you our picks for the best, the worst, and the weirdest news of 2025 Buzzkill style.
And we'll also look at last year's predictions to see if we got anything right while looking into our ever-changing magic ball to foolishly predict what is in store for next year.
Listen, Liz, no one could have predicted that it could go this bad, this fast, because it's really bad and it feels relentless.
I mean, I don't think you could have gotten out of bed if you knew that it was going to be this alarming.
I love that you think I've gotten out of bed, Liz.
Well, I've seen you straight up.
It's AI. It's AI. I am fully horizontal and in a fetal position because the shit show, ice every single hour.
There's a couple of things for me that threw me for a loop. So you said ice. Is ice the thing that if you were to look at, like, I could never have predicted that, would you say?
I think how bad due process and state-sanctioned torture were just thrown on the table and been upheld, not by our judicial system, but definitely by our federal government. I think the speed of it, I would not have expected so quickly, so horrifyingly. And so it feels completely.
I would just push back a little bit to say, yes, our judicial system, because, you know, the Supreme Court is looking at birthright citizenship. I mean, Brett Kavanaugh literally ruled that ICE could target somebody based on what they sound like and what they look like to tell if they were Americans or not.
You're absolutely correct. I misspoke. I was thinking of the lower judiciary, but I know our Supreme Court literally does what they want.
Yeah, they really do. You know, I think ICE is probably, you hit it, like, of all the things that the depravity, you know, it just also comes back to me of how humanity is just, it's like there's a deficit in these people. Like, they can look at what they do and seem to have no feelings for the harm they're causing, whether that's ICE, whether that's letting people die in parking lots, whether that's firing people, whether that's not caring if somebody's healthcare costs are going to triple when their wages have gone down and their food costs have also skyrocketed. Like, how do you not have any humanity at any point? You know, I mean, that's the part that really is throwing me. And then for me, it's just how fast people caved and the capitulation to all of it. You know, the fact that Republicans in Congress just sit back and allow Trump to steal every part of power they have in their judicial branch with executive orders. And then Democrats are like, well, you know, we're just going to wag our finger. This is not right. Like, there's no urgency from Democrats. And then you have colleges and you have law firms and you have companies.
Yeah, I was going to say you have news companies. It seems like everyone just fell in line really quickly and folded. What I will push back a little bit on is our institutions are failing us. I think that what we have seen is like individuals and like people in cities coming together in ways that are meaningful. It still doesn't feel like it's pushing the needle significantly, but I do feel like the people are like standing up in ways that actually surprise me, considering how fast our institutions folded.
I think that's right. And I think that we have to have more people deciding that they are going to carve out time in their day to help this fight. Because what I feel a little bit that's going on is you have folks doing work as individuals because they actually are humans and care, but I don't know that they can sustain. We can't sustain potlucking for 11 million undocumented people who are being hunted down, or American citizens. You know, it's like we need structures in place. We need laws in place, and we need accountability for the people who are breaking all of these laws. And so it made it really hard to choose when we were thinking about, you know, this show and how we were going to pick the best, the worst, and the weirdest in abortion. You know, the abortion news is so sparse
Yes.
You have Jessica Valenti, you have our podcast, you have some social media outreach, but there is no parallel media coverage to the amount of harm that's happening in reproductive health rights and justice. And I think it's important to name that.
Yeah, it does. And I don't want to minimize all of the terrible things happening in abortion. And that's really what we're going to focus on this podcast.
Yes.
Everything is on fire.
And I think that's right. I think that after Roe fell, people were outraged about, how all of these laws that immediately went into effect after Roe and how they kept passing these laws were allowing for people to die. And that's continued, people.
Has not stopped, sped up, in fact.
And then just like watching that rise of the manosphere and normalizing tredwifery and like hearing politicians and broadcasts saying, should women really have the right to vote, and all this stuff.
And also when we're talking about dismantling of our institutions, right, the few protections we had for clinics, for providers, for clinic defenders being systematically dismantled. And then the people who we got in jail for like invading clinics just being pardoned.
People don't even understand that, like, in January of last year, anti-abortion extremists were pardoned. It was, again, just buried by the January 6 pardons and by all of the other stuff, which, we always say is by design, and it is. But you're exactly right. You have a law, somebody gets thrown in jail, and then they're pardoned because they have given Trump a bunch of money.
Or just it's politically expedient for him and he will run with that. Or just a general going back to the lack of humanity, not caring about the humanity of people who have been attacked.
It's true. And just trying to navigate all of that as you're feeling it happen to you, and then doing the work that we do at Feminist Buzzkills and Abortion Access Front, sometimes it feels like we don't get a break. So we hope that learning about what's happening while giving you something to do about it, while being able to infuse humor, can be a way for you to take the information in so that you can process it and actually be part of the solution.
Yeah.
As we've done the show the past couple of years, we've talked about how since Roe, there hasn't been just like, oh, that was clearly the worst or the weirdest story of the year. It was just more than that.
Oh, yeah, because when it comes to picking these things, there isn't really a story. It's actually trends that emerged.
Definitely trends that emerged. And so what category do you want to kick it off with?
Let's kick it off with the worst so we can start it from the bottom and then get to the top.
Okay, that sounds fine. So I picked as my worst story of 2025 the confirmation of RFK Jr. as the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Oh, fuck yeah. I get why this is your worst, especially because he's terrible. He has terrible abortion policy, but it's kind of been overpowered by all of the other terrible stuff he leads with.
It's true. And I think his vulnerability, or else it's his kink, I can't tell which, for conspiracy theories. We all know the stuff that he's talked about, with firing experts and researchers who we rely on, from everything from healthcare to recommendations like childhood vaccines and infectious disease protocols. And I don't know, making sure our food doesn't have poop in it.
Oh, he doesn't care about that.
No. I mean, he's literally recalled every single thing. And it seems like abortion's controversial. I get it. But like measles vaccines or like hepatitis B for babies, like how is that controversial?
When did Tylenol become controversial, Liz?
I mean, that's the whole thing. When he's saying pregnant women are gobbling up Tylenol, giving their babies autism, he says everything causes autism.
Yes.
I wish he thought that Trump caused autism. It's like, dude, get a clue. And then while we were immersed in him saying all of that weird shit, he went on that network News Nation, which is terrible, and we'll talk about it on the other side of this clip, and dropped this bananas claim about abortion and vaccines. What happened next was crazy.
Now, there are populations in our country, like the Mennonites in Texas, who are most afflicted, and they have religious objections to the vaccination, because the MMR vaccine contains a lot of aborted fetus debris and DNA particles. So they don't want to take it.
Okay. So, those Mennonites are always at the forefront of being part of clinical trials
And society.
and society. But second of all, the wild claim that there's, how did he put it? Abortion debris in vaccines.
Abortion debris.
It's thoroughly shocking. And he's on a panel with, sex pest Chris Cuomo. And I know you're like, you mean Andrew Cuomo? No, I mean Chris Cuomo, who was also fired from CNN for being a sex pest. Stephen A. Smith, who has not met a idea that just is wrong. James Carville. And they all just sat there and let him make this statement. And that's, I think, what happens so much when we talk about misinformation around abortion, is that people don't actually know the facts. So they just sit there.
They just sit there and they let a charismatic person who speaks with authority just sort of, they cede the floor to that person. RFK Jr. is not charismatic.
Also, who can understand him?
Not me. And also, but I do think elevating someone with this level of crack pottery to the position of Health and Human Services just gives him so much authority to lead with this crazy.
That's right. And so if this comes up in your life, here's the facts. There is no fetal tissue in vaccine. So some vaccines actually have come from decades old cell lines, right? Literally thousands of generations removed from the original fetal tissue. It's like they function as like a factory or a growth medium that just keeps replicating from the one thing that happened in the 60s. Final vaccines are purified. They don't have fetal debris, and any like fragments of DNA that might be there are just biologically inert, and they don't have any health risks. And so, there's vaccines that have thousands of degrees of removal from Kevin Bacon and fetuses in like chickenpox and MMR and hepatitis. And here's the thing too, is that this was a thing that came up during COVID because the J&J vaccine was one of the vaccines that had some like long history of coming from fetal tissue line. And the Pope and other religious figures, leaders, weighed in and said, these vaccines are not compromising your morals. Go ahead, get yourself some fetal debris, shoot that shit.
I would also say, even if they did, right? Even if they did, are we valuing this fetal debris that doesn't exist over actual human life and suffering?
You know what? I just want to emphasize they don't, right? But no, I agree with you. I think that even if they did, yes, why should that enter into that?
No, I understand that they don't. But like, even if they did, measles is devastating for a human body.
Right. But I think that people who have moral convictions, and, I am working off of the country we live in, not the country that listens to logic.
Sure.
And if you are a religious person who has, leads with your religion and says, I don't want to take that.
It's fine.
Like, stop.
Your moral authority says it's fine.
And then taking that out of the equation, right? Because he's so susceptible to these conspiracies, there is anti-abortion groups who are now trying to push the narrative that there's abortion in our drinking water, which has like the same vibes as abortions in the vaccines. Weirdly, it seems like he wants to so desperately not believe researchers, and maybe he's like not to be psychological about it, but like he's like the failure of all failures in the Kennedy family. And maybe he's so deeply shamed at what a loser he is that any amount of expertise he needs to debunk with his own weird bullshit. And the fact that it's now being indulged to me is so weird. But the weirdest thing and the most horrible thing, and we had a whole podcast about it, is the fact that he is now succumbing to the anti-abortion establishment lobby, who have decided and these are, by the way, tactics because abortion's popular and safe. So they have to invent all this crackpot shit to stop abortion, right?
Yep.
And so we did this on the podcast. We've been following it. There's a junk study that was dropped by a junk organization.
A fully made up organization that sounds official and does nothing.
That's right. And so they used a whacked out study following basically like insurance claims, not efficacy or anything, to prove that medication abortion is actually less safe than we've said it is for 25 years. And there's proven data that shows it is. So when that dropped, the first thing that his FDA head did and he did was say, we're going to review medication abortion because this crackpot study came out, and we are just going to have to see if they follow the actual science of 20 years of medication abortion use, 6 million people using it with how many complications? It's literally under 50.
I'm going to go back to being devil's advocate. Even when they pulled this crackpot study with no clinical significance, it still placed the abortion pill at like 90% effective and like, I don't know, less than 10% of complications. Like even when they fudged the numbers, we're still safer than Viagra.
Yes. And so the thing that's really interesting about how this is all going to play out is this Mariah Carey, and I can't say this guy's name right, but I think I just did.
I think you hit it. Yeah.
Macari, whatever. I don't care. I don't want to learn the name of a guy who I hopefully will just be in prison in 4 years for being a garbage person. So he's putting a pause on the study until after the midterm elections. And that just broke. And that has me pondering, because everyone's pissed about it, right? The right wing is mad because they're like, you should be fired. You should have rushed something through that was actually your own bullshit study to get rid of medication abortion. And I think at first I was like, that guy sucks. He's waiting till after the midterms because abortion's popular and he doesn't want to release a study that says abortion's great. We're doing great. But also I think he's going to be fucked because he's going to have to go through all the data, and people have used it for 25 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's going to have to say, I can't find something terrible.
It's so interesting because I feel like you might be right, but I'm also like, you don't think they're willing to lie, Liz?
Here's the do. I do think they're willing to lie. What I want to do in 2026 while they're looking at that, I want to get a petition going, and I want to get the open comments going on the FDA website of people who've used medication abortion so that tens of thousands, maybe millions of people who have used this drug and have had success and have had families and have had safety and have had nothing happen to them, flood these fuckers so that that empirical data and lived experience using the drug for 25 years, that gives you a whole wide swath of time to not have side effects from it. I think that's what we need to do. And so I'm going to pitch that to our team, but I've just told the whole world about it.
I love it.
I do think that that's how we reclaim.
Yeah.
Because we do have evidence on our side so profoundly.
20 years worth.
25.
And that's only American.
Yes. 1988 in France. So we're going to watch that story definitely in 2026. But that's why I chose RFK, because it was just so much more than abortion. And it just shows the intersections of, when we talk about reproductive justice, that is intersections of all the things that happen. So on to your worst of 2025.
Oh, my worst is bad, not as far reaching, or rather I went in detail on a story that is replaying out in so many different levels around the country.
Yeah, another trend
in states that have abortion bans. I'm going in on one woman's story, but similar stories are happening around the country. So this is a story of Tara Walker, and she was a Texas mother of a 14-year-old, and she was suffering from extreme pregnancy complications. The reports state that 90 medical providers were involved in her care, but because of the Texas abortion ban, no one was willing to authorize the termination that would have saved her life. And so at 20 weeks pregnant, she died, but having suffered through all of her pregnancy and be told that it was going to be okay the whole time. And part of why this happens is because doctors have to basically put their name on authorizing that abortion is the proper cure for what is ailing someone. And I think none of the doctors she encountered were willing to take that risk and put their name on the line for her.
I remember when the story came out, it was just the fact that 90 different people who she was in their care.
Yep.
90.
Yes.
Could not find a way. And you know, you have every healthcare provider in these states having to wonder if they're going to lose their license, lose their ability to practice again. And, sometimes I think an undersaid thing that happens is when this happens and these physicians are in these states and they don't know whether or not they're going to be criminalized for what they do. One of the things they're thinking about is if I'm criminalized, I am 100% of the people doing this procedure in my community.
Yeah.
Right. So if they are jailed, criminalized, lose their medical license, entire counties, cities, regions are often losing the one person who would do it. And that's a terrible thing to think about. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's a thing.
It's a terrible thing to think about. It is also a terrible thing to balance against a person's individual life, right?
Yes.
While they're contemplating this, people are suffering, people are dying, right? And if you are going to be that one person in your community, then be that person in your community. And I'm not saying this to implicate doctors. Obviously, the problem here is that the legislature allows bans like this to exist. The problem is Ken Paxton. I too wouldn't want Ken Paxton to know my name, right? Like, I understand, but like, this woman would have lived if she had been pregnant in 2021, even in Texas.
Yes. And to pull out even further, you can't advocate for somebody to have an abortion. You can't help somebody get out of the state to go have an abortion because you'll be prosecuted. So the entire infrastructure around saving someone's life is like too fucking bad. Prove it. And I think this is the worst story of the year. Like I picked RFK for the bigger picture, and I think you chose Tierra for also the bigger picture.
Yes.
She is so emblematic of the cruelty and the disposability
of pregnant people. Yeah.
Right.
And she knew something was wrong. She'd previously had loss of pregnancy to stillbirth because of her conditions, her preeclampsia, all of these conditions. So she could tell this isn't right. She knew there was an abortion ban, and she was like, but am I sick enough? Because I don't feel good. She considered buying pills, but she was afraid if she bought pills, she might be jailed for that. Like, these are all the considerations that are going through her head. This is a woman who knew what she needed, and no one trusted her.
Right. And we'll link to her aunt's statement on Instagram. It's super powerful, and it was just too long to pull out of context here, but like definitely go to the show notes and listen to it because it's worth it. But also, Moji, when you look at Tierra's case and then you pull out to the statistics of the larger harms, maternal mortality rising 56% in Texas in the first full year they had their abortion ban. And that's up like 95% amongst white women,
which is the protected class in Texas.
Exactly. And Black mothers like Tierra are 3 times likely to die than the white mothers in those states. Mm-hmm. So how do you live with yourselves knowing that the risk of maternal death is 155% higher than a state like California? Like, how do you say, let's put that before Governor Abbott and get that signed?
Part of the reason that these are so deadly is that they're written so ambiguously, right? So there is no space for a doctor to say, well, I don't know if she's going to die in 5 minutes or 5 weeks. And if she's going to be pregnant for 3 more weeks, let's just risk it rather than, you know what I mean? So when people go and ask for clarity, as many people have done in Texas alone, legislatures are like, well, we don't want women to be able to get an abortion because they have headaches.
And doctors are like, I don't know what this means.
Exactly.
It's not like the ambiguity is stupid. It's by design.
And alternatively, in places like California, New York, maternal mortality has fallen 21% because when doctors can listen to people and when people can get the care that they need, then maternal mortality is preventable.
It's true. I think this was a really good story because it just sums up where we're going. Thank you for that. And, just support to her family and to all the families of people who have had to watch loved ones needlessly die.
Yeah.
Which happened far too often and is happening far too often. And it's a trend that I don't see the trend lines going in our favor in 2026 unless we have midterms that try to shapeshift this and state legislative elections that also try to shapeshift this stuff. So that was stark. Let's go to our best.
Let's bring the vibes up. Let's.
So with best, there weren't a lot of trends. There was literally, it's the opposite of what we talked about earlier, which is the worst stories have trends. The best stories have
moments.
All those vibes, right, if you will.
Yeah, Illinois expanded funding for abortion in their state budget, which we would expect from Illinois. Oh, federally, a judge ruled that the federal government can't block Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood for now, and we'll take the win while we can.
Yeah.
And of course, New York and California have taken further steps to protect doctors who send medication abortion to banned states. And that is because Texas won't stop.
It's true. In fact, the stories are so few. Like when you call it a best, right? When you call it like a super win, I literally had to go international with this one. I hate to say it. Sorry, US.
Oh, God.
There was a big victory. I went with the EU initiative called My Voice, My Choice, which just cleared the hurdles to emancipate patients in the EU who live in banned states to be able to get funded for the travel to other countries in the EU to get abortion care. It's really great.
Okay, so this is so exciting. A small feminist organization called the March Institute out of Slovenia started this campaign, and they traveled through the EU to get 1.2 million signatures. And that allowed them to bring an abortion initiative to vote at the European Union Parliament.
It's so cool. So the initiative states that now in the EU, you will have a fund so that, like I said, citizens of EU countries that ban abortion can tap into that fund to pay for travel to another EU country to get abortion care. Now, it doesn't take abortion policy out of the member states. Like if you still live in a state that doesn't have abortion, it's not changing your laws, but it is handing those in banned countries a way to access care, which is unbelievable.
So that's basically like if you live in Poland, it'll help you get to Spain.
Right, exactly.
And to do this, they had to get a widespread number of votes, meaning at least 7 of the 27 countries in the EU had to have significant representation in their petition.
Right, and it's great. And so now it's like so exciting. The biggest hurdle is done. And that means a parliamentary committee is now going to draft a legislative proposal on how to create the system to implement this program, which is exciting, but I can also imagine that it is super tricky, right? Dealing with the countries that don't have abortion. How do we do that? What does that mean? But this is a story that we will follow till the end in 2026.
Why was this your best story of 2025?
Because the resiliency and the dedication of this movement and watching how they were relentless. And Abortion Access Front and FBK has become great friends with the March Institute. We've helped promote this campaign. We got some of our famous friends to help promote it. And if you're a regular listener of the pod, you've heard Nika Kovac, the leader of the March Institute, on here talking about this initiative. So, they're inspiring how they organized, and they're amazing. So please, please, please follow them on social at myvoicemychoice.org. They're not only doing amazing work in the EU, their socials also capturing in real time so much of the hellscape that is the US.
This is such a good story. And I think it's an inspiring tale of motivating around abortion and really getting a large group of people to come together and affect change.
Totally. So that was my good pick. I know you actually scrounged up a story in the US. That's a good story.
Again, the pickings were slim, but I actually feel good about this one. We know, and you touched on it in your worst, medication abortion has been a thorn in the side of the anti-abortion movement since Dobbs, since before for sure, but definitely since Dobbs.
I would say since way before.
Since way before Dobbs, but I think it's been keeping hope alive for us in a way since Dobbs. And so to see a generic pill triumph is a joy. And the reason that this was really exciting for me is because even in this dysfunctional government, in this instance, the FDA was running exactly how they were supposed to be running, Mm-hmm. The Trump administration, the press secretary basically felt that they needed to clarify that this is not an endorsement on the part, but it's just the law, and they had to follow the law. And honestly, Liz, I'm not always sure they're following the law. So it was nice to get a confirmation that in this thing that I know they weren't doing because they wanted to, that they were following the law.
So what is the thing they did?
Well, so generics have to prove that they're identical to brand names. And basically, a generic mifepristone was approved by Trump's FDA this fall.
Not only this fall, it was the same week that this terrible awful study dropped, and they announced they were going to be investigating mifepristone. That was the part that was like the head spinner, right? And so we were like, yay. And then I remember when we did the podcast on this, and we were like, they're forced to because it exactly mirrors mifepristone. There's a generic, it has to go on the market. And then we were like, womp, womp.
I also love the story because these things happened at the same time, and then it drove them wild, right? Like,
I know. Is that why it was your best?
Yeah.
Because it just
drove
you're just
them
petty.
wild. The worst of the worst were like, wait a minute. The president of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life, she was like, this reckless decision by the FDA to expand the availability of the abortion drugs is unconscionable.
Oh my God. And of course, Josh Hawley was big mad. Big mad. He tweeted, the shocking FDA has just proved another chemical abortion drug. We have approved not another one. Just a generic, same one. Same one, dude.
Nothing's changed.
And also just like, of course, he's going to be mad. It's 100% lethal to the child. And of course, always important to remind folks that his wife, Erin Hawley, is the lead attorney for the Alliance for Defending Freedom and is always the attorney who is battling abortion cases in court. So that mixed match of never want to envision them fucking.
The joy is, again, anti-tears are sometimes refreshing. And I want to also reiterate, like, it's a fleeting joy. Like, this doesn't mean we're in the clear. This review that you brought up earlier in the pod, it's still happening. And because of the narrow language that allowed it to be approved, which is that it is identical to mifepristone, if something happens to mifepristone, the same thing will happen to this generic. The restrictions will apply to both in the same way. But Liz, it's 2025 and I'm taking joy where I can.
No, look, a generic abortion pill on the market is great because the truth is when this investigation happens and all of the questions swirling around why this has been postponed, if it turns out that Mariah Carey cannot find a reason to curb access to medication abortion, it means that there's a generic pill on the market. It means that it's less expensive. It means that there's more access. And so we can keep our fingers crossed. I think this is a really good story. And I'm glad you picked it because it would have been my second best story. So good job, Moji. I'm glad you found one that was in the United States. So on to the inexplicable, Moj. The weirdest story.
I mean, how do we even decide on the weirdest? These weirdos just, they're relentless.
It was just a cavalcade of weird, honestly. There was that guy, there was a legislator that said, science says, they always say science says, Google it, that every time a sperm touches an egg, there's a flash of light in the uterus.
Sure.
There was somebody in Indiana that decided to take consent out of sex ed because you're not supposed to be having sex to begin with, so you shouldn't be consenting.
Yes.
Of the abortions in the water, which we talked about earlier a little bit. And that there was one politician, I don't remember what state, who said that loosening abortion regulations, I think they were arguing on a bill to, maybe it was consent for minors, I don't remember.
Mm.
But he said that toddlers would just be walking around being able to get abortions without their parents' permission.
Toddlers cannot and should not be getting pregnant.
Yeah. So none of those were the weirdest.
No.
In my pick or yours.
Crazy.
My weirdest was, this kind of falls into the conspiracy in the water sort of realm. It's a bill that was in Wisconsin that was born out of this push to say that we're drinking fetuses when, there's waste in wastewater, which is also breaking news. But I want to call them a port wine cheese for brain because they are in Wisconsin. Started buying this abortions in the water hysteria and proposed within a law trying to regulate medication abortion that anytime you take medication abortions, the abortion pill regimen should also come with something called a catch kit.
I say what now?
It's called a catch kit, Moji. I guess it is some kind of bag or contraption that you would be required to pass your pregnancy in, and then I guess use a twist tie to seal it up and pop it in the mail to the doctor who prescribed you the pills.
What do they think 12 weeks pregnancy looks like?
I don't know what they're thinking at all. There was a lot of weird. I picked this one because there's something deeply wrong with anybody asking people to catch their abortions while they're having them in a bag and then like holding it up and bringing it like you bought a goldfish at a pet store in a baggie and then bread twisting it up and send it off to a doctor. What kind of weird shit is that? And here's the part that's so bizarre is sometimes you're bleeding for a while. So are you supposed to just carry this kid everywhere you're going? If you go to Applebee's or you're going to the zoo, just like who knows what's happening. But the weird part is they also, if you don't use the catch kit and send it back to the doctor, it's a class A felony, but there's no penalty.
Okay, so they just want you to opt in?
I guess just opt in.
Also, do they not know about automatic flush toilets?
They don't know about shit. If you're saying, please abort in a bag, it's not great.
All right. So in reading the story, it seems like the bill's author is a bit of a crackpot.
Oh my God. Well, there's 3 authors, but one in particular. Cuckoo.
Lindy Brill, who is from Sheboygan.
Her. Yes.
Yes. And my favorite comment from Lindy is in why the bill is not controversial, which you got to be a crackpot to think it's not controversial, is that it would not target miscarrying women, only women having abortions, even if they're both using the drug mifepristone. Also, does she not know that a miscarriage is called a spontaneous abortion?
And also, if you're using a pill for a miscarriage, you're having an abortion. So it's just, you just say you're having a miscarriage and they're like, fine, you're exempt. Like, she's so stupid.
Oh my gosh.
So
There's
been an update to the story since we're literally recording this. And that is one of the authors decided to take the catch kit out of their abortion bill, not just because of the strong ew factor, but because it wasn't going to pass with it in the bill. And so I feel even regular people were like, what are you fucking talking about?
I feel like that's a good sign because a lot of times these legislatures just go with the crazy. And I like that this legislature was like, we can't do this.
Right.
This makes no sense.
But, it won't be the end of it. So, look, they may have yanked it out now, but, it's gonna keep showing up.
It's going to emerge in Missouri, I'm sure.
Yeah, because this abortions in the water thing they're really trying to make it a thing. They're really trying hard to make it a thing. And I think people are like, ugh, because again, abortion's popular and they're going to try anything in their power to dance around trying to get anti-abortion bills passed. And good luck to you. So that was my weirdest.
That is weird. That is deeply weird, Liz.
It is deeply weird. Thank you. But I think you have the weirdest story of 2025. And it's the weirdest story of all, honestly, because it has all of the elements of 2025. It has extremist Christians, sexual deviants, and AI. And honestly, if there were like a tie-in with tariffs and ICE, you would have had a story that had all the biggest hits of the year in it.
It's true. AI did the most in 2025, right?
Yeah.
The clinic invaders who were arrested on face charges claimed that the footage of them storming abortion clinics, the footage that they streamed, was AI.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, we did create it through filming them actually storming the clinics that they actually did. AI is also fueling content on fertility and pregnancy apps, and generally with the idea to talk women out of using birth control, like the Peter Thiel-backed 28 app that we referenced a few episodes back. And of course, half the drivel Trump posts on Truth Social is absolutely AI slop, and there's probably some.
Are you saying that he really didn't fly a plane over New York and drop shit all over protesters?
I'm saying he doesn't have muscles. Also. But this story has the most disturbing AI usage I've heard in 2025, and this involves a Christian nationalist who used AI to create and share unspeakable images. Unspeakable.
Okay, so when you had put this story in the script, I hadn't read it yet. And so I was like, in a year where literal sexual deviants that are religious types dominated the headlines, how did Moji choose this one? And then I read it and I realized you've hit the mother lode on depraved zealots.
It's a labyrinth of weird, and it keeps building. There hasn't been enough reporting, so I'm not even sure we've hit the crescendo of horrors. But this is the setup. Nathan Peternil is a 43-year-old hot charismatic Christian pastor. He's a husband with a trad wife. He's the head of an Indiana mega church named Life Church. Nathan also hosts a podcast called Jesus, Sex, and Politics with Micah Beckwith, who also happens to be the Indiana lieutenant governor.
So far, sounds like your garden variety douchebag who probably has some really bad hot takes on the internet, but he's next level. So on their Jesus, Sex, and Politics podcast, Nathan and Micah talk about, well, Jesus, sex, and politics, but through a admittedly Christian nationalist lens. And their episode titles include The Month of June and the Rainbow Mafia, where they, of course, rail against pride celebrations, and Fighting Big Pharma, and how you can be part of the MAHA movement, and they inspire people to not take vaccines. And then there's like anti-abortion shit, like what are women doing outside of the home besides just, polluting male spaces, la, la, la. But ironically, though? They have also addressed both pornography and child SA on their podcast, encouraging parents to monitor their children's online activity.
On a side note, Micah Beckwith himself has been accused of, in the lieutenant governor's office, screening AI-generated video of the wife of his boss, the Indiana governor, dancing topless with a bunch of other evangelical stooges. But this is not the topic of my story.
What is the topic of your story, Moji?
My story isn't about their collective creepiness. It is about Jonathan Peternell, the 24-year-old son of Nathan.
Oh my God. We have suddenly become a true crime podcast.
We absolutely have.
Oh my God. So lay it out for people because it's so wild.
Okay, so in October, Nathan's son Jonathan was arrested for having and disseminating over 200 files of explicit material that included child abuse, child sexual violence, and AI-generated photorealistic images of pregnant, nude toddlers.
Ew.
But it also included 50 photos and video, maybe, of his parents nude and engaged in sex acts. His parents!
How do you get pictures of your parents?
I don't know. Covenant eyes?
I mean, that's the first thing I thought. It was like, oh, do he and his dad share that Mike Johnson app where if you're looking at something filthy, it goes to your purity partner and then they have to screen it and then he's just like collecting the data. I think he said that his son hacked into their computer or some shit.
Also, why are you hacking into the computer to look at your parents? It's so gross.
And then finding porn and then looking for more porn. Like if you saw one piece of footage of your parents having sex,
you run screaming.
Literally, I think that if my parents showed me a picture of them having sex, that would ensure abstinence for the rest of my life.
Forever.
Honestly.
Jonathan went and got 49 more.
This is what's so weird. And then also, like, just a little extra grossness. The Snapchat group he was using to allegedly share these images was named Diddy's Disciples after Sean Combs. Oh my!
Liz, there's a racism in there. There's a racism in there.
There's a racism in there. And then just up the ante, but like separately, some female members of Life Church have also accused Pastor Nathan of inappropriate behavior, and shocking. That is just a shocker.
So this story is weird and this story is disgusting. And really what gets my goat is the hypocrisy of these men who claim that they are leading their community. They say that that's what they're doing, but they cannot be trusted to lead their son away from child SA material.
I mean, it's just like there were so many of these stories, and it's just like every accusation is a confession. And it is like when you talk about the dangers of drag queen story hour and immigrants, when you have story after story of Christian pastors doing unspeakable things to children, it's just fucking sickening. So this case just emerged in October. And where is the case at?
Well, Jonathan has been released on bond. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges. I want to say they collected all his devices and found these on his devices. But he's pleaded not guilty, and he has a dispositional hearing scheduled for January 2026. So we'll see what happens then.
And also, Moji, do you know, like, is the church still supporting Nathan?
As far as I know, it's a mixed reaction. Some church members are expressing continued support, and some are asking Nathan to step down. We're going to have to see.
And, you know, it's like interesting because knowing that little tidbit about the lieutenant governor looking at AI footage of his wife doing who knows what, I'm guessing that he's not probably going to get a pardon from the governor. He kind of screwed the pooch on that.
I feel like the fact that I know this is a story may mean that the governor also knows that this is a story. And,
I cannot believe that there is no major media attention on the story because it just keeps growing and it just kept getting so awful. And I do think that this was just the weirdest fucking story of all. And again, like we said earlier, we couldn't have predicted any of this shit because it's so ludicrous. But we did do this show last year and we did make predictions, and so let's think about when we taped the show last year in December. Kamala Harris had just lost the election. We were all kind of panicking about what the Trump administration would roll in. So let's see how we did on our predictions, Moj. What do you think we did? Do you think we were good or bad?
I think we were probably... I'm excited to see.
We're going to kick in with me and we'll start out with my best. I think that people are motivated to get out and fight with the tools that we will give them as we work them out from AAF. The worst, we're going to have to go face to face, probably at the Supreme Court with some of these weirdos that are taking on the cabinet positions. All stay the same. That's a joke. I like that we're going to have to fight them at the Supreme Court and lose every time. So I feel like my predictions were off. Let's hear Moji. Let's see if Moji nailed it.
Oh, abortion on demand and without apology becomes the law of the land from V to shining V. Wow.
All right. The worst.
People continue to ignore the preventable deaths and suffering of pregnant people and the ways it's likely going to ramp up with the incoming administration.
So, Moji, your best was a national disaster flop.
Not even close. Not even close, Liz.
Abortion on demand and without apology becoming the law of the land. But your worst was 100% nailed it, and it was your story of the year.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even remember when I chose that story. I guess I just got one thing on the brain, Liz.
Well, you know what? It's a trend that you couldn't avoid. So we got to wrap up this show, but do we dare make predictions for next year?
Okay, let's do it.
Let's start with your bad.
Okay, my bad. Specific again. We will lose the fight against abortion pill reversal misinformation at fake clinics, and the antis will find a way to blame the adverse effects of abortion pill reversal on the actual abortion pill and use that to justify restrictions.
That's a good one. Yikes. What about good?
Oh, my good prediction is that as we keep hearing the stories of people suffering and dying as a direct result of these abortion bans, we, the people, will band together and overturn these restrictions nationwide.
Wow. Okay. You are banking on the fact that we're going to have free and fair elections. I love that about you. Very positive.
I got one note, Liz. I got one note.
It's good. I like it. All right. My bad is sort of tied together with the good. The bad is the move to further restrict abortion is going to be all in the federal agencies, right? The FDA and all those places, and not actually in the legislatures because abortion is popular and the midterms are coming.
That makes sense, actually.
We're going to see a lot more RFK intervention and Marty Macri and all that shit. Good? I kind of said it earlier when I pitched my petition that nobody knows about yet. But I think that the good is we create these tools to flood the agencies with personal stories on how safe and helpful medication abortion is. I mean, with over 6 million people using it, I feel like we need to let them know because we are the empirical data we've been waiting for.
You know what I love about our goods, Liz, is that we both basically say we are saving ourselves.
And that we have to. We just have to help inspire people to do it. So, Moj, I think we did it. I think we did the best, we did the worst, and we did the worst of 2025, and I think we nailed it.
I want to thank all our listeners, all our supporters, and I think people need to donate to support the work that we do because we are trudging through it in 2026 as well as we did in 2025, like we did in 2024, and like we will continue to do.
That's exactly right. So how do they support us, Moji?
They like, subscribe, show us some love with a 5-star rating, and you can stay connected to us on social media at Abortion Front and turn this enragement into engagement.
That's right. And if you want to engage and you're looking for a way that you can fit in to do some abortion activism, because like we said, it's all on you. We've got our great 5-part activist training series, Operation Save Abortion, at OperationSaveAbortion.com. And while you're there, visit our super cool activist calendar, which is full of local and national actions and educational opportunities.
For the activists who want to support some real clinics this holiday season, you can purchase much needed items off their wish lists by heading over to our Adopt a Clinic page on our website. This week, we're spotlighting Women's Health Center of Maryland with things like panties, patient gowns, hand warmers for their escorts, and many other items from their wish list. And the link to support them is in our bio.
So we are taking a couple weeks off, but before we go, we want to just say thank you for listening, for supporting us over the year. You've been great. We love you. We love being able to bring this to you. So thank you for your support. We'll be back in the new year.
And in the interim, Liz, you're going to be in the Twin Cities doing your year-end show.
That's right.
Tell our listeners what's happening.
Thank you. Yes, please come see me at the Parkway Theater in Minneapolis for the Winstead Files. It's my annual year in review shows. The December 27th show is sold out, but come celebrate with me on New Year's Eve. We have a show on December 31st, and tickets are still available. You can get them at theparkwaytheater.com, and the link is in the show notes.
And if you're wondering what's a great way to treat yourself at the end of the year, you know what you can do? You can join our Patreon. You do that, you'll support great content, you'll get cool FBK merch and experiences. All pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. You can pledge at patreon.com/Feminist Buzzkills, and the link will be in our show notes. FBK is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Jen Moon for Abortion Access Front. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you. Be safe, be well, happy holidays, and from all of us at FBK, have a good one.
Happy New Year.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.